Khashoggi before he was murdered by agents of the Saudi government in 2018. Today we are gathering for an important event here in D.C. We're gathering to reveal a new sign outside of the Saudi embassy. We have a list of amazing speakers who will join us. Let me first introduce my colleague and friend Abdullah Al-Ouda, who is our Gulf Director at Dawn. Abdullah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Raed. Hello, everyone. My name is Abdullah Al-Ouda. I'm the Gulf Director at Democracy for the Arab World Now, Dawn, the institution founded by our friend Jamal Khashoggi. Thank you for taking the time to join us today here in front of the Saudi embassy here in Washington, D.C. Today's unveiling is the culmination of many months of work, a collaboration with the District of Columbia and our friends and partners in the human rights community. Today's unveiling of Khashoggi Way is intended to remind us of the gruesome murder of our founder, Jamal Khashoggi. Last week, CNN reported that a senior official from the Biden administration conveyed to the Saudi Crown Prince that the U.S. wants to effectively move on from the murder of Khashoggi in order to repair ties with the Saudi government. They know justice has not been served, Jamal's body is yet to be found, and the prisoners of conscience, including my father, who Khashoggi advocated for, are still in prison. Our message today is that we will not move on. Jamal's legacy will live on, no matter the normalization efforts. And this event today is just one way that we will fight to honor Jamal's legacy. We gather here today to witness the unveiling of Khashoggi Way on the street where the Saudi embassy is located, to serve as a reminder to passerbys, to Saudi royals, to Americans, to all humans of conscience, that Jamal's legacy will live on. It is an honor to be here with Jamal's friends and family, folks who have and will continue to fight for accountability until true justice has been served. Please help me welcome Dawn's Executive Director, Sarah Lee Whitson, who will unveil the Khashoggi Way.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. The unveiling of this sign today is meant to send a very clear message. We intend to remind the people who are hiding behind those doors. We intend to remind them every day, every hour, every minute, so long as they remain on this street, that this is Jamal Khashoggi Way, and we hold them responsible and we will hold them accountable for the murder of our friend, of a brave Saudi man, Jamal Khashoggi, who dared to challenge the tyranny of Mohammed bin Salman, who dared to challenge the cruelty and the crimes that continue to this day. We are unveiling this sign at exactly 1:14 p.m. because that is the moment in which these cowards tricked our friend into entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. They tricked and deceived him in order to torture him and kill him, in order to silence him and silence the voices of democracy activists like Jamal. But guess what? We are not silent. We are here, and the whole world is standing with us. We have a message for the Biden administration as well, for its shameless capitulation, for its cowardly concessions that do not serve the American people and do not serve American interests. We will hold the Biden administration to account for its treacherous betrayal of the promises it made to the American people, the promises the American people wanted to hear. which is to end support for the brutal dictatorship of Saudi Arabia. We do not want a security agreement with Saudi Arabia and Israel and the UAE. We do not want to defend and put the lives of Americans at risk to defend and protect apartheid governments, bloody-handed dictatorships, war criminal petrodollar-fueled states. We are going to challenge this because it is not in America's interests. It is not in the interests of the Arab people. It is not in the interests of humanity. Thank you.
I will invite all of our speakers to help me in revealing the sign by holding the rope. Congresswoman. There's enough rope for everyone.
Can you come down? One, two.
No, we should put this there.
What if it doesn't come down?
Jamal Khashoggi's fiancée, Khadija Jankiz, could not join us today in person, but she sent a recorded video that will be available on our website. One of my colleagues, Taghreed Rishq, will read an excerpt of that speech.
Hi everyone, my name is Taghreed Rishq and it is an honor to read Hatija's words for you. Thank you so much for being here today. By naming the street after my dear Jamal, you send a powerful message of support regarding what he stood for, fighting for justice and freedom. Today, on this happy but very solemn occasion, I have two messages. My first message is to Jamal. Dear Jamal, the ideals and values you lost your life defending have been celebrated worldwide and continue to spread every day in the region and around the globe. My second message is to President Joe Biden. Mr. Biden, you'll soon visit Saudi Arabia as president, where you'll meet with Jamal's heartless executioner, dishonoring yourself and Jamal by meeting MBS. Mr. President, I beseech you not to lose your moral authority or overlook this heinous crime. You must uphold your vow to bring all the perpetrators of this brutal crime to justice. But as disappointing as this is, if you have to put oil over principles and expediency over values, can you at least ask, where is Jamal's body? Doesn't he deserve a proper burial? And what happened to his killers? Ask also about the hundreds of other political prisoners rotting in Saudi jails and the victims of brutal repression like Jamal, who have been suffering immensely under an oppressive regime. To all of our friends who have stood with Jamal, I salute you and say that we can make a difference and often do. No one should get a pass because of wealth or oil or geopolitics. We cannot live in a lawless world. We owe it to them, we owe it to Jamal to keep fighting and speaking out until justice prevails and until the bell of freedom rings aloud. Thank you.
Thank you, Taghreed. And as I mentioned, the full remarks from Khadija are available on our website. The next speaker is Congresswoman Norton. Please join us.
Thank you. I am so pleased to join you for today's ceremony commemorating a local street here in our city in honor of the brave Jamal Khashoggi. This isn't on. It's not on.
Yeah, we're going to put this up.
We're pulling it up.
Can you put it up? Testing, testing, testing. Try one more time.
Okay. I'll try to speak louder. I am so pleased to join you for today's ceremony commemorating a local street in honor of the brave Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi Arabian journalist and resident of the National Capital Region, who dedicated his life to speaking truth to power. Jamal Khashoggi was a contributing columnist for our Washington Post and a political activist. At great risk to his life, he documented the human rights abuses of the Saudi regime. He called for giving equal rights to women in Saudi Arabia and for ensuring freedom of expression without fear of imprisonment, despite the fierce suppression of criticism against the regime and the arrest of intellectuals, religious leaders, and celebrities who spoke out. Mr. Khashoggi continued to write and to use his voice to uplift the struggles of those in Saudi Arabia who were silenced. As you may know, I have been a lifelong supporter of freedom of speech and the press. At the American Civil Liberties Union, I litigated free speech issues, including before the United States Supreme Court, even on behalf of clients whose views I fundamentally oppose. It is the sign of a working democracy when citizens feel safe to express their differences of opinion and criticize the government. Freedom of speech and the press are bedrocks of our nation, and we must work to preserve this freedom both here and abroad. In light of his brave and groundbreaking work, I am pleased that the D.C. City Council has renamed this very street as Jamal Khashoggi Way. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Congressman. We apologize about the technical difficulties. We're getting our backup mic, backup loudspeaker is coming on its way. As I mentioned earlier, we have a few members of Congress who were unable to join us today. but you can go to our website to view video messages from Congressman Adam Schiff, video message from Congressman Connolly, video message from Agnes Kalamard, who is the former UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killing, and as I mentioned earlier, the message from Khadija, who was the fiancée of Jamal Khashoggi. Let me check on the status of the mic here. But there's another one. See, they're bringing it through there. So the sound system is down, but they can hear us through the mic, so it's not too bad. You know. Our next speaker today is Chairman Phil Mendelssohn.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'm Phil Mendelssohn, the Chairman of the Council of the District of Columbia. It is with the Council's approval that we are able to change the names of streets. And so this sign is a result of Council action, and I'm very proud that we did this. I have to say, I'm the one who chaired the hearing, the public hearing with testimony. I'm the one who looked at the legislation and the issue. And when I saw the sign unveiled, it's just powerful to see that in front of the Saudi embassy. And that's the point, that's the message. I really just want to say this, that the council voted unanimously to change the name of this street, this block in front of the Saudi embassy, because we wanted to remember a victim and remember and memorialize a victim of repression, and to thank him for his speaking out. We also wanted to express our support for free speech, as our congressional representative noted, the importance of free speech and a free press, and because we also wanted that the Saudi government cannot forget what happened, what it did, that this is a constant reminder, a memorial to Jamal Khashoggi's memory that cannot be covered up or repressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for your leadership and for joining us today. Our next speaker is Councilwoman Pinto, who represents Ward 2, where this street is located.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brooke Pinto, and as mentioned, I'm the Ward 2 council member, so I represent this street and this neighborhood in Washington, D.C. on the D.C. Council. And I'm really honored to be here today to designate this street and unveil this street sign in honor of Jamal Khashoggi, a bill that I introduced. Through his journalism, Jamal Khashoggi was a fierce advocate for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. He knew that by shining a light on Saudi Arabia and seeking truth, he risked his freedom and indeed his life. Journalists around the world we still see, and here in America, face similar dangers every single day. And we must never let those who seek to intimidate them succeed. Freedom of the press is fundamental to our democracy and to safeguarding human rights right here and around the world. In honor of Mr. Khashoggi's bravery and to reaffirm the District of Columbia's commitment to free speech and a free and independent press, I introduced legislation to designate New Hampshire Avenue between Virginia Avenue and F Street Northwest as Jamal Khashoggi Way. And thank you so much for Chairman Mendelssohn being here today and all of our colleagues for supporting this bill. This location is extremely important so that everyone who visits the embassy in Washington, D.C. will be reminded of Mr. Khashoggi's courage and the indispensable values of free speech and a free and independent press. I'm proud to share that the Jamal Khashoggi Way Designation Act of 2021 passed the District of Columbia Council unanimously. A real sign to our shared values here in Washington. And I want to thank Dawn for your collaboration on this legislation, especially Raid Jarar, Shahand Yazdanyar, and my former colleague Barry Weiss, who worked very hard on this important initiative and designation. So thank you all for being here today to celebrate the memory. This is an extremely solemn occasion, but also one that is hopeful, in that we are reminded that we are here to help Mr. Khashoggi's legacy live on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you to our tech team for coming up with a backup system in the middle of nowhere. Our next speaker is Nobel laureate Tawakkul Karman.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. About 4 years have passed since Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi has been killed and his body cut up at his country's consulate in Turkey without achieving even little bit of justice. The Jamal Khashoggi case provides evidence that politics could prevail over justice, but such conclusion should not prevent us from defending justice and human rights, especially since the battle between tyrants and advocates for human rights, for freedom, for democracy has always been unequal. We are here today at the ceremony of naming the street of the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C., Khashoggi Way, as a reminder of Jamal's heinous murder by the Saudi state with involvement of high-level officials. Naming this street after Jamal Khashoggi, it's kind of memorialization for a journalist who was brutally murdered simply for his expression of opinion, a person who used to believe in freedom and the world's rule in change. Memorializing Jamal Khashoggi and reminding the world of his name are also a commemoration of all the victims of politics assassinations and reminder to the world that extrajudicial killing is a crime against humanity. So, with Khashoggi Way, we confirm that fascism will never be the law we submit to. And the state relations, dirty oil money, and trade-offs of interest at the expense of human rights for us will fail in stopping us for continuing our effort to achieve justice for Jamal and at the same us to achieve Jamal's and our dreams for freedom, justice, democracy, and rule of law. Here, I want to say that, unfortunately, the White House announced that President Biden is going to visit Saudi Arabia in the middle of July. This means that Biden has abandoned his commitment to support human rights around the world. That Biden has abandoned his commitment to punish Jamal Khashoggi's killer. That Biden has abandoned his promises to his people that he will be hand with the all freedom fighters around the world. And this is shame. It is shame. Shame on Biden administration. Washington should stop patronizing and coddling with dictators' regimes. According to Biden's administration statement, his visit to Saudi Arabia aims to expand the circle of peace. I am a Yemeni. I came from my country, Yemen. I do not know whether Yemen is within the circle of President Biden strategy on will he visit Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman and his regime in Saudi Arabia has killed Yemeni people in a war continue since about 8 years. Will Mohammed bin Salman be away from justice? Riyadh and Abu Dhabi and Tehran have contributed in destroying my country, Yemen. Let me ask Biden, when you meet MBS, will this service justice for Jamal? Will this serve democracy in Arab region as you promised? Will this serve peace in Yemen? Will this serve stability and security in the world? Absolutely no. Absolutely not. MBS and dictators in general pose the greatest risk to the global peace. Tyranny is the root of all evils, such as political and economic corruption, social backwardness, and terrorism. When freedom, democracy, rights, and the rule of law prevail, terrorism and violence disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawakkul. Our next speaker is Nihad Awad, one of Dawn's board members.
Thank you all. First, I would like to thank City Council members, Chairman Mendelssohn and Council Member Pinto for introducing the legislation, conducting the hearing, allowing us to testify on the importance of renaming this street Jamal Khashoggi Way, the significance of this. Your leadership has been impeccable. Thank you so much for honoring the legacy of Jamal Khashoggi and honoring the freedom of press for all. And also thanks to members of Congress who sent messages, and to the awesome team of Dawn, from the executive director to the staff who worked along with other organizations, including Code Pink, to make sure that this effort will happen. And today we are celebrating and commemorating the legacy of Jamal Khashoggi. Briefly, I have known Jamal Khashoggi for 25 years, and I helped him build Dawn, the democracy for the Arab world now. Jamal worked in this building. He advised the ambassador in this building. He served Saudi Arabia from this building. He served the world by his writing as a columnist for the Washington Post. He served in Washington, D.C. He lived in Virginia. He was a man of this area. So, and being a journalist, today is a very loud and clear message, a reminder for those who abroad suppress freedom of expression to the point of assassinating their opponents without being held accountable. The way we do it in Washington, D.C. is different. We hold people accountable. We speak truth to power. We don't feel tyranny abroad or potentially at home. And that's why we are so proud of our freedoms that allowed us to come in front of the Saudi embassy to remind them that while you try to silence Jamal Khashoggi, today is a different message. His name on the main street in front of your embassy will remind you every day. Whenever you want to mention your address, you have to utter his name. Whenever you write your address, you have to write his name. Whenever you want to give directions for people to come to your embassy, you have to utter her name. His name will continue to haunt you until the perpetrators of justice are brought, the perpetrators of this crime will be brought to justice. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamal Khashoggi was a marvelous human being. He was not violent. He was a peaceful reformer. He never threatened anybody. He hoped that his words and his articles will continue to inspire reform and change for a better life for people in the Middle East. He risked all what he had, including his life. He was lured from this embassy to go to Istanbul, and where he was murdered. So our message today to the Biden administration is not one that is beyond your means, Mr. President. You promised the American voters, you promised the world that human rights will be centered in your foreign policy. If you go to the Middle East and meet with the perpetrators of this crime, you are sending a betrayal message, not only to American voters who voted for you, but to the world and to the tyrannies that you can do whatever you want. Instead of bringing you to justice, we're going to reward you. And that is that's not the right policy. We hope, and I know some people told me today, you will not change anything. You will not change anything. But we have to clear our conscience by speaking truth to power even at home, by reminding our president that, Mr. President, don't break your promise. Mr. President, you have to exert all the pressure within your hand to bring the perpetrators of the murder of Jamal Khashoggi to justice. Don't reward them. Don't reward them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nihad. I want to invite Medea Benjamin from Coat Pink to give remarks as well. Thank you, Medea.
So I'm very proud of my city council today. Thank you so much for doing this. But I'm not proud of my government. And when I think that Jamal Khashoggi walked into an official consulate in Turkey and never came out, a Washington Post reporter, and that we have a president now who's on his way very soon to Saudi Arabia, I think, what the heck? I think, what happened to that pariah state that President Biden talked about? When I think of what the Saudi regime did to Jamal Khashoggi, the only answer is to treat MBS and Saudi Arabia as a pariah state. When I think of what the Saudi regime does to so many dissidents who are either murdered or languishing in prison right now, I think the only answer is to treat Saudi Arabia as a pariah state. And when I see what Saudi Arabia has done by getting involved in a war in a neighboring country in Yemen, and killing so many people inside Yemen and turning that country into an absolute catastrophe, I think the only way to treat Saudi Arabia is as a pariah state. So let's tell our government we want accountability for Jamal Khashoggi. We want to stop selling weapons to the Saudi regime. We want to tell Joe Biden not to go to Saudi Arabia and sign any kind of security agreement with that pariah state. So let's be clear. This is a great symbolic gesture, but there's a lot of work we have to do to make Saudi Arabia the pariah state on the international scene that it must be. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. We have two more speakers to go. The next speaker is my friend Michael Dodora from the Committee to Protect Journalists.
Thank you, Raed. My name is Michael Dodora, and I lead U.S. government advocacy for the Committee to Protect Journalists. It's an honor to be here today with this crowd of dedicated elected officials and civil society partners. A few weeks after Jamal was murdered by, as you heard, a hit squad upon entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, I wrote a letter to Senate leadership that there was no single path to justice for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. By this I meant that Jamal's killing was a global outrage that required a response from individuals and institutions around the world, and they had to explore a full range of options to hold his murderers accountable. I never thought then that one of those paths to justice would originate in the back room of a public library right here in the nation's capital. 4 years ago, shortly after the murder of Jamal, I received an email from a member of Washington, D.C.'s Advisory Neighborhood Commission 2A. The subject of the email was Jamal Khashoggi Way. At the time, CPJ was deeply engaged in advocacy aimed at the White House, State Department, Congress, and the United Nations, as well as other international actors. We called for an independent investigation and for all those to be held accountable. What could this hyper-local body down the street from my apartment in Washington, D.C. possibly do in this fraught geopolitical situation? Well, I was informed that the Advisory Neighborhood Commission 2A would be voting on a resolution to rename this street Jamal Khashoggi Way. So 48 hours later, on a Wednesday evening in late November, I walked into the West End Library, just a short distance from here, and testified in favor of the resolution, arguing that the renaming of the street would serve four very important purposes. It would honor the innocent victim, a journalist and U.S. citizen, and a neighbor to us all. It would help raise public awareness about Jamal's murder. It would provide an educational marker to tourists and residents. And it would send a daily reminder to Saudi officials who visit and work in this embassy that U.S. residents reject their repressive tactics. These are all as true now as they were then. But this street sign will be a reminder to embassy staff, tourists, and residents alike. But it should also be a reminder to us. Over the last decade, nearly 300 journalists have been murdered in the line of work around the world. In roughly 80% of those cases, no one has been held to account. This sweeping failure of governments around the world to hold to account perpetrators of attacks against journalists undermines global press freedom and democracy. From the beginning, it has been clear that if the Saudi regime could get away with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, then no journalist or dissident anywhere would be safe. And one might say, sadly, that the regime has essentially gotten away with this murder. Many paths to justice have been blocked. The Committee to Protect Journalists filed a lawsuit to find out whether the U.S. Intelligence Committee knew of threats to Jamal's life prior to his murder. We lost that lawsuit. And who, other than the underlings, have really been held to account for Jamal's murder? But consider, someday soon, someone somewhere, perhaps today, is going to Google the Saudi embassy and see the name of the street on which it is located, Jamal Khashoggi Way. And that matters. Every little bit of accountability matters. It shows power-hungry dictators and autocrats that people will not sit idly by while journalists are targeted, that we will reach into our political toolboxes and find whatever we have at our disposal to hold them accountable. Now, there remain critical questions surrounding Jamal's murder. And one particular question in our minds right now, I think, that has been covered by many speakers: will a U.S. president seriously shake hands and sit down with the man ultimately responsible for the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi? But today we have this certainty, that the street outside the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. will be forever named Jamal Khashoggi Way. And so on behalf of the Committee to Protect Journalists, I would like to thank the ANC2A, D.C. City Council members, Mayor Bowser, and all of my civil society colleagues who have worked for years to make this happen. We are grateful for your efforts. Jamal, you are not forgotten. You will never be forgotten. Your name and your work will endure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We have one more speaker, and then I'll make a final announcement before ending the event. Our final speaker is our friend Bill McCarran from the National Press Club.
Thank you, Raed, and thanks to Dawn for putting together this event, and thanks to the council members for pushing through this important event. So I'm the executive director of the National Press Club. We're the world's leading professional organization for journalists. We have 3,000 members representing nearly every major news organization, and we're outspoken advocates for press freedom. And Jamal Khashoggi was our 2018 John Aubuchon Award honoree. This is the highest honor the club gives in press freedom. At the gala where Jamal was honored, Fred Ryan, the publisher of The Post, received his award. And in attendance was the publisher of the New York Times, the executive editors and managing editors of both papers. And each year on May 2nd, we have a quiet moment in our lobby to remember Jamal and call for justice for him. I was asked to testify as part of the City Council process, and I'm here today to share a little bit about what I said during that process. So the club is based in the National Press Building, and we built that building in 1926. It was meant to be a symbol to all who live and work in the city and all that visit D.C. from across the country and around the world, that our country and our city stand for freedom and democracy, and that a free and independent press is a cornerstone of democracy. We see this street renaming to be another powerful symbol of what this city and this country stand for: democracy and freedom of expression, including press freedom. We are here at a great intersection, a road that travels to the Kennedy Center over there, or to George Washington University over here. People from all over the world will visit this street, and they will see its name. And they will do something I am going to ask you to do right now. They will take out their phones. Go ahead, everybody who's got a phone, take out your phone. Now hold them up. Now take a photo of the street sign and of the Saudi embassy. Now send those photos on social media with the hashtag Justice for Jamal and whatever else you want to say. Thousands of people a year will do this. 100 are doing it today, right now. This message will reach millions of people around the world who will think about what Saudi Arabia has done because they hated what Jamal wrote and they wanted to keep him from writing in the future. They ended his life, but his spirit will live on in this way with millions of people. Changing the name of the street is more than a symbol and more than a really good tweet. It is something every visitor to the Saudi embassy will see. It is something everyone who works in the Saudi embassy will see every day. This was a murder planned, financed, carried out, and covered up by the government of Saudi Arabia, as detailed in a report made public by the U.S. government in 2021. Our government wanted us to know this. They paid for the investigation and the report, and they released it to the public. Now our country and our city and the world knows what Saudi Arabia did and why and how, and that such actions are intolerable and will not be forgotten. This sign will be here in the heat of the day or the dark of night, or when it rains or snows. Every day this will be Jamal Khashoggi Way, and every day it will remind people of this terrible crime, but also of who we are. We are for justice for Jamal. We are for press freedom, and we are for democracy. And so was Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. We are going to take a group picture with the sign, with all the speakers. So I do want to invite all the speakers to line up in front of the podium. I do want to make an announcement that we are very proud to have pushed this sign to be the first street in the United States to be called the Jamal Khashoggi Way. But my big announcement today is that this will not be the last street. We are going to change other streets wherever there are consulates in this country or maybe even abroad to make sure that Jamal Khashoggi's name is remembered forever. I want to invite all of our guests to come behind us for a group picture. Everyone can come behind one group photo.
I used to run up and down the stairs of that building and deliver press releases.
Oh, yeah.
Before there was in and all this.
Yeah. Oh, you want to put the banner in front? Oh, it blocked. They have the sign. Oh, they have to show two ways. After that, you can go up and down. So when they just got done, go up there.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Thank you. Thank you. Very good to meet you in person. Thank you for all your support.
Justice for Jamal! Justice for Jamal!
There we go.
Hey, how are you? It's my back to stand like that. Not bad.